Welcome, Pile 1, to your reading on what you are woefully unprepared for. Before we begin, a couple of disclaimers, the first of which is that I cannot make up any truths for you. What this means is that anything that I say should be a confirmation of what you already, to some degree, know, whether intuitively, maybe even consciously, subconsciously, whatever the case is. If anything that I say simply isn't true for you and cannot be true for your circumstance, just leave it. It's meant for someone else. It's meant to help someone else and shouldn't negate the rest of the reading for you. The second disclaimer is that I cannot make decisions for you. That has to be up to you. It's your life. You have to make your own decisions. I'm just a stranger on the internet reading some cards and posting it on the internet for anybody for whom it might help. Like I said, it's meant to be a confirmation of what you already know to some degree. The cards, I cannot make decisions for you. I'm not a professional. I'm not equipped to give you tangible help, and the cards aren't a replacement for professional advice, whether that's like medical, psychiatric, whatever the case is. If those are things that you need, please seek those things out. Tarot is, again, meant to be a confirmation of what you already know. These things being said, let's dive into your reading. We have here 3 oracle decks up top and the tarot deck here at the center, and it's all basically answering the question of what you are unprepared for. But I did specifically ask the question as I was shuffling the cards that there be revealed the lifelines available to you. So to get into it, point blank, what you are unprepared for is whatever it is that you're trying to take on. So take a moment, and maybe you came into this reading actively asking about a specific thing. Like, am I unprepared for this thing that I'm about to start, whether it's a job, any kind of endeavor, really. It doesn't have to be a job, maybe a relationship, moving somewhere, anything really that you've made the decision that you want to pursue. Maybe not the decision to pursue it, but maybe you've kind of concreted for yourself that you want to. It could be either or, whatever the case is. There's something that you are starting out, that you have the chance to start out, and that's what you're unprepared for. Why? Because you're trying to move on while still. Okay, so the way that it's kind of coming through is very much in character, per se, with the theme that I'm going for with the reading. It's obviously "You're Gonna Need a Bigger Boat" is a reference to Jaws. And with the imagery that I was using, I was kind of using different horror movies and water creatures and stuff. And so it's although the theme was meant to be kind of like movies and old horror movies and stuff, the way the message is coming through, like in imagery wise in my head, is actually kind of playing out like a horror movie. And it's not so much that I'm seeing you're going to go through like a horror movie experience. It's all metaphors, right? Tarot and these oracle cards, they're symbols, and we're meant to interpret them as such, not literally. So it's not that I'm literally seeing you're going to go through this horror movie moment, but I'm going to word it I'm going to like describe this scene to you in a horror movie, and I want for you to, I'm going to like kind of help you with it, but I want for you to take the metaphor that's kind of being said to you there. So, and I'm going to also kind of explain why each card is kind of giving me this imagery that I'm kind of going to describe right now. So basically, the way that I'm seeing is you're running from the creature. Whatever the creature is, whatever the killer is, you're running from it, and you're doing pretty good, okay? You have a fair distance, but it's just you and that thing, and you don't really have anything to defend yourself with, but you know that you have to keep moving. The twist here, the plot twist, not the plot twist, but the problem here in the story is that you're injured. Whether that's because the creature got you, or just as you were running you got injured, or maybe it's an injury that you've always had and it's springing up for you as you're running from this thing. The point is that there's this injury that's really preventing you from taking off and really getting away from this creature, and not only that, really winning against it and being able to do what you need to do to win successfully, gain the victory, survive the night, so to speak. And what's being said is that you really need to take the time and I know that you're running, so it's hard to take the time, but you need to take the time to dress this wound however you can, whatever that means, because until you dress that wound, one, you're leaving a track for this thing that's chasing you to follow you, but two, if you do dress it, if you do address this wound that's really stopping you, then you'll actually be able to take on the really arduous task of not only fighting this villain that's following you, but like winning, like what all of the things that it's going to take to really win and gain the success and victory that you're really looking for here. Part of that is a detachment. A detachment is required on your part. Kind of to keep on going with the story that we're going here with. Think of like in the movies when like they have to set a bone, or they have to address the wound, they have to like do something really painful, like pour some antiseptic in there, or there's gonna be some sort of pain involved with the healing part of it. And maybe that's what you're kind of like hesitant about. It's like it's gonna suck to take care of this thing, but the thing is, the whole thing sucks. All of it sucks. And the whole situation that you're in, the fact that you're injured sucks, but the thing is that if you were to dress this wound and address it and maybe relieve it a little, then the whole situation becomes less bleak. It becomes less dire because less of your attention, less of who you like, your essence is being drained by this wound and the pain that it's causing you and how it's slowing you down. So that's kind of what I'm getting. Why? Let's get into the specific cards as to why I'm getting those things. I want to start with Prostitute in its light attribute, because when I was shuffling this Oracle deck, and mind you, usually with Oracle decks, I don't take reversals, but I really like the way that this Archetype card, Archetype deck has both light attributes and shadow attributes, and so I just do reversals, and I intentionally create the reversals as I'm shuffling them, so that I understand whether the card is coming up in its light attribute or its shadow attribute. And so if it's coming up upwards, I take its light attribute. If it comes up reverse, I take its shadow attribute. And why I'm explaining that to you is because I specifically asked, or the intention was that if the card was coming up upwards, then that was going to be a lifeline, something that you need to really survive the night. And again, going with the metaphor, not just the night, whatever it is that you're taking on. And if it was a shadow attribute, then it was something that was working against you. And since it's an archetype card, it's something that you're doing that's working against you. So the point is, it's coming up in its light attribute, Prostitute, and it reads, accentuates the challenge of surviving without negotiating the power of your spirit. In essence, very fancy way of saying, a very poetic way of saying, really a very pretty way of saying that you're not willing to compromise your spirituality, yourself, to survive. You're going to survive, but you're going to do it with your ethics, with your morals, with yourself intact. And what that creates is more of a challenge, because likely there's an easier way to survive this, which does compromise your ethics and your morals, which does ask you to diminish yourself in some way. There very well might be an easy pathway for you to take that does cost you more than you're willing to pay. And Prostitute in its light attribute is basically saying, good. You are aware that you're not meant to take those things, because you aren't meant to compromise yourself for what, your ethics, your morals, whatever it is, because that's what's going to help you survive in the first place. That's what's going to get you through this hardship that you're about to take on, whether it's a hardship or not. It could, if it's just a job, I don't want to fear monger this thing for you where it's like, oh my God, I'm going to get into a horror story. No. If it's like anything that it is, to take that horror aspect, the fear out of it. All I'm saying is the bad guy is just the challenge of what you're taking on. The bad guy that's following you, it's not a villain. It's not something that's actually here to hurt you. It's just the challenge that you're facing. So, I am not getting any examples as I'm trying to channel them, because I'm assuming that's just how varied all of your situations are. But the point is, whatever you're taking on, it does pose a challenge. There's a bit of a challenge to it, and you're being asked that you meet those challenges, understanding that you're not meant to compromise yourself in meeting those challenges, and maybe even to be wary of any shortcuts, any easy pathways that might become available to you, which you recognize, yeah, it's easy, but it just makes me feel icky, or it just, I don't like it, or what, or maybe it's actually something you do recognize as just, that's not something I am willing to do, so don't. And in fact, hold fast to yourself, to your ethics, to your morals, to really succeed, to really thrive in this environment. Air is where I was getting that idea of detachment, but it really concretes it with the oracle deck cards in the center. But to stick with the specific card, air. I mean, there's so many wonderful things. It's one of the elements. It's one of the base elements that is used not only in tarot but astrology as well, and basically every iteration of the elements that exists, air is included. So there's so many things that could be said about air. And when I flipped it, really the word that came through so concretely was detachment. Because that's something that air signs, and I don't usually like to bring astrology into my tarot readings just because I feel like it muddles things, but air signs are just so gifted at that. And for certain people, detachment sounds like a dirty, ugly word because it then means kind of like, oh, you don't feel, or you're inconsiderate. And it can mean those things, absolutely. But the thing is that detachment is also, to people who know how to do it and recognize its value, it's invaluable because it enables as in it makes easier, not possible, because sometimes enable means makes possible, and here I mean it makes things easier. It makes survival easier. Detachment makes survival easier. Now here's the bit of a paradox, where if detachment to you feels like a compromise of self or a compromise of your morals or your ethics, and that might be a specific situation where you're being confronted with something that you can't detach from, that you just feel so much for, and everything around you is asking you to detach, then in those circumstances, the point of survival is to not compromise yourself in the face of detachment. If that isn't true, if you, like, for some people really struggle with detachment, but you recognize how in this specific instance, that's the pain that we're talking about. The pain of detaching, the pain of like, oh, but I just want to like help, or I just want to, do something, but it's like you've been shown that you can't do anymore, or that you can't do anything at all. Whatever the case is, that detachment might be the painful thing that you need to do. And so to apply it as you need that medicine, whether detachment is something that you need to survive, whether, people are asking, it's the environment is asking you of it, but deep down that you shouldn't, or whether you struggle with it and you know that it's the best thing. And that's kind of the tricky part here, and kind of the scary thing about this specific reading is that it's kind of difficult for someone who struggles with detachment to then figure out which one you're in. Because if you're in a situation where you should detach, but you're the type of person who struggles with detaching, it's going to be very easy for you to justify staying here and taking on this slight attribute as, oh, I should stay in this situation. And obviously that's not what's being said here, because if what's true is that you do need to detach, and you're just justifying it because it's like, well, no, I'm a very considerate person. I have to be true to myself, and being true to myself means staying attached to this thing. Now, the trick to figuring out whether you need to detach or not detach, be a little more involved, is when you're being honest with yourself. Is staying attached, is staying involved, is it hurting you? Sometimes sometimes we do decide to stay in places because it hurts us, because that is to the benefit. A specific circumstance that I'm kind of thinking about, and I'm not trying to project this, it's just to give you an idea of how I'm getting it, of instances where we do decide to take on something that hurts us, but it's to the benefit of like maybe the group or to the greater good, or whatever the case is. Deciding like, grandma announced that she's having some health issues. And so, you just got into this great new relationship and everything's great. You just got into this independent rhythm and you're doing great on your own. But no one in your family is stepping up to be like, I'll take care of you, grandma. Because that's why she's announcing it, because she needs some help getting taken care of. And everybody knows grandma's really difficult, and grandma might be like one of those conservative people who just, she's annoying as hell, and like whatever the case is, sorry if you're conservative. Yeah, you're annoying as hell. Um, the point is that you recognize, yeah, it'll suck for you for as long as you're gonna need to caretake for grandma, but like if unless if your grandma's been abusive and toxic and like she doesn't deserve your help, this isn't true for you. Please don't take that like that way. But if it isn't that she's been toxic and she's just a little annoying, and at the end of the day she's actually been really good to you and all of those things, at the end of the day, deep down that the best thing for you to do is to bite the bullet and help out. That kind of instance where you decide to take on something that is painful to you, but in the bigger picture of things, it's a good thing. So that's kind of how we know. Now, in that instance, if our grandma is someone who has in the past been horrible to us, who has consistently hurt us, abused us, has taken advantage of our hospitality and the way that we do things, then obviously that's something that is hurting us, and we are inviting something painful and hurtful to us that we know is hurtful to us into our home. And so in that case, you are then compromising yourself for the sake of preserving your need to stay attached and be the helpful person. And so in that case, the detachment that's required would be you to be detached from that situation and be like, I can't help you because you only hurt me. So again, apply that as you need to. That was just a specific example, but that idea of the clue to understanding if you need to detach, or whether the detachment that's being asked of you is what you need to survive, what's hurting you, is the thing that you're being asked to detach from, whether by divinity or the circumstances around you, is it hurting you? Is it better for me to detach? Would I benefit from detaching? And in answering those questions, that's kind of how it'll be revealed to you which one you kind of need. So, okay, moving into the oracle cards here. I want to start with the center and go out. The center card, Lapis, the point of it here in the spread is that she's incredibly powerful, and she has these wings that allow for her to, like, she's not the only one who can fly. Oh my god, I can't remember if there are other characters that can fly. I'm sure there are, but the point is she has wings, which gives her access to different vantages in different places that most people don't have access to. And that is the point of these two other cards on the side, is that these are both locations that only limited characters have access to by some shape or form. This place can only be accessed not just mentally, it can be accessed physically, but the physical entrance to it can only be done by one character, so it's very restricted access to this space. And the kicker is that the one character who can go into this space can't breathe there, so they can't stay there very, very long. So something to that, it kind of echoes that idea of the hostility of the environment. Not to fearmonger about you're about to get into, but kind of to go back to that metaphor of like the idea of stopping to address this wound does to you pose a threat of pain. There's this recognition that to do this thing, it does come at a cost to you, whether it's like the pain or you just, in this instance, like the character can't breathe. Again, not to fearmonger, it just might be that for you and what you're taking on, there might be this aspect or to it that flares up in you. You kind of pose it as, you receive it, you recognize it, whether true or not, as some type of threat or as something that's like again, that idea of it being a challenge. Not just what you're taking on being the challenge itself, but certain aspects within it being the specific type of challenging that triggers in you this idea that like, okay, this is actually kind of hard to take on, and you kind of, it triggers that fight or flight response of like, do I want to stay here, do I want to continue with this, is you're about to start freaking out, kind of to again that idea of, yes, some places are difficult to be in, but the reassurance that you're capable of being in these spaces. Now sure, this character can enter that space, but we're not taking those specifics. the point of this reading is what you're unprepared for. And what I'm really getting, it's not so much that, hey, don't take on this thing because you're not ready for it. That's not the point of this reading. What's being said to you is, hey, you're going to take on this thing, but in order to really succeed at this thing that you're taking on, you're going to really benefit from taking a minute, taking some time to stop and address these issues, address whatever it is that you feel is slowing you down, has been slowing you down, because if you take care of that thing that's been slowing you down, then you'll really be able to run through this course here and then really get your victory. And so, okay, moving forward. This other place, that same character who has access to this space can access this space. It's an island out way out there, and basically they teleport. They have like these teleportation pads, and at some point the teleportation pad at this island gets destroyed, so there's no way for them to go back to it. We fast forward, and there's now like these sentient beings. They're not human, they're just, doesn't matter, they're this village of people that exist on this island, and this character that we're talking about can communicate telepathically with them. There's a lot more that goes into it, and I'm oversimplifying it, but the point is that our main character who can access this space can also access this space through his mind. So this idea of not only restricted access, something that like really only you have access to, but also the idea of the challenge it takes to access these spaces. Because the one episode that focuses on our character's ability to communicate with the people here, he kind of goes through it. He's kind of put through the ringer. It takes a toll on his body, and in this space, like, he can't breathe, so he can't stay there long. So like it's not easy to engage in these spaces, and that's kind of on purpose. These spaces are meant to be restricted access. There's something precious there. There's something good there that's meant to be protected. And if it's not like something precious of like monetary value, it could be just wisdom. It could not just, I don't want to say just wisdom as if it's less than monetary. The point is, it's there's something in these limited spaces that you have access to, that you're being asked to go into, that you're being asked to step into, despite, you know, how difficult it might be to step into these spaces, because you have the capacity for it. To get into the tarot, the Nine of Wands upwards depicts, to me, it stands as the willingness to take on whatever comes our way. In the traditional Pamela Coleman Smith imagery, we see a bandaged soldier who's wielding his wand, ready to take on whatever is coming through. So yeah, he's been hurt, but he's bandaged himself up and he's ready to take on more. Reversed, then, it's kind of, I'm seeing it here as not the unwillingness to move forward, but the not having, we haven't met the right criteria in order to move on successfully. So kind of like how I was saying in the upwards version, we're willing to take on anything. We're ready to take on it. Reverse, then, we're not ready to take on it, which is really, again, in character for the theme of this whole reading, what you're unprepared for. And it really struck me, like that image of the bandaged soldier in this card in the Pamela Coleman Smith imagery. And I mean, in this card, we have a mummy, which is like a bandaged being, right? So reverse, then, it's you not bandaging it. It's you being unbandaged. It's you having this wound that's basically bleeding, again, going back to that metaphor. But despite the fact that you haven't dressed this wound, despite the fact that you're not fully ready to move forward, to keep on going, we have the Two of Wands meeting that energy. And the Two of Wands is, oh my God, like, it's just, I'm using this Halloween inspired deck because it's a Halloween reading. It doesn't matter when you watch these, but you know, it's a horror inspired reading. But anytime I use this deck, really, I'm always drawn back to the Pamela Coleman Smith imagery. And that's just the thing that I think I just always do. If I'm not using if it's not a Marcella deck, I'm pretty much using the tarot deck that I'm using as a Pamela Coleman Smith deck. It's just easier that way. And even though this deck does have wonderful imagery that can, like, it does lend itself to being its own system, For the specific purposes of this reading, I'm gonna make references to the Pamela Coleman Smith imagery just because it really just drives home my point. And the Two of Wands depicts someone who has one wand and it is bolted to his home, as in it's like kind of a trophy. It's kind of evidence to past successful endeavors. And in his hand, he has a new wand to represent the new venture that he's going to take into, hoping for success, hoping to have a new trophy that he can also bolt to his wall and home. And so we have this idea of wanting to take on more, getting ready for more, as if we're ready for more. But the Nine of Wands reversed is basically indicating, hey, you're actually not done with this last quest. You don't actually have the trophy for your last endeavor. Let's finish that up before we try to do anything forward. But here you are like, no, we're good. It's actually okay. We're just going to keep on moving because we're going to be fine. And here's the thing. This contradiction of your unwillingness to dress the wound mixed with your strong will to keep moving forward is creating a sense of misery. The Ten of Cups reversed. The Ten of Cups represents the totality of our emotional capacity. So all of our feelings. Reversed, then, yes, it can mean, well, actually, yeah, we're going to take it here. Reversed, it means not the totality, but the hyper focus on one, if not a group of some of these emotions. Really not having access to the whole scope of emotion, but really being limited and restricted to some specific ones. And because it's coming up reversed, just the reversal, not all reversals make the meaning negative, but because the cups are an emotional realm, reversals do kind of sometimes make it kind of like a bad emotion, or no emotion is bad, but the harder ones to deal with: sadness, grief, anger, disappointment, whatever the case is. And so the Ten of Cups reversed is saying to me that because you're moving forward despite the fact that you're not ready to move forward, that's showing up in the way that you're engaging with these things. So kind of how I was using in that metaphor, where like, because you have this wound that you haven't dressed, you're over here limping and you're in pain, and it's making you slower. It's making this whole surviving that much more difficult. And if you would just take the time to dress this wound, then you would have, you wouldn't be so, like, it's not, maybe you wouldn't stop limping, but like maybe it would hurt a little less. And maybe if you clean the wound nicely and whatever the case is, maybe you would feel some relief and it wouldn't be festering and it wouldn't be bleeding, and now you can focus on other things, because this bad thing, the wound, whatever it is, isn't taking up so much of your attention, isn't taking so much of your emotional, mental capacity, physical capacity even. The point is that you're being restricted to whatever feelings you're having about it because of your refusal to address what you need to address. And if you were to address what you need to address, then you would have access to all the other emotions that you can feel about this endeavor. What this is basically saying is kind of like that saying, life is what you make it. That's kind of the case here. If you go into this with a wound, guess what? You're going to have a miserable time because you came into it with an unaddressed wound. But if you, before going here, prepare for it, like the whole purpose of this reading, tuning in to see what we're unprepared for so that we can prepare for it, dealing with this thing that we need to deal with, addressing with it so that we can go into this and then be able to enjoy it, or whatever the case is, succeed at it. Do what we need to do here successfully because we're not being hindered by that unaddressed thing. And the Knight of Cups reversed is basically that whole idea of the stifled movement, because the Knights are about movement. The stifled movement as a result of the Ten of Cups reversed, as a result of the Nine of Wands with the Two of Wands. So basically, the misery that's being created by your refusal to address your wound or whatever it is that you're being asked to address is either completely stopping your progression in this endeavor, or it's not only slowing down this endeavor, but it's making the whole endeavor, the whole movement through this, miserable. And what's going to happen if you continue to engage with this thing, this endeavor, miserably, you're going to fail at it. You're not going to succeed. Your lack of not only addressing this thing, but your lack of focus on it is going to show with the Page of Swords. Reversed, because the Page of Swords upwards, yes, is a novice, is someone who doesn't know yet. The Page of Swords upwards is someone who doesn't know yet, but is willing and exciting and eager to learn as much as possible, because they know that when they have that knowledge, they're gonna do this so much better. Reversed, then, it's not having access to that. It's us never really having the capacity to learn successfully what we need to learn in order to succeed here. And why aren't we learning successfully? Because of this thing that we're hauling along, that we're not addressing. The whole point being that if you do address this wound, then you will actually be capable of moving forward successfully through this thing. And if you move successfully through this thing, having addressed what you need to address, then hey, guess what? Then you'll have access to all of the emotions that are going to be capable for you here. Not just the hardship of it, but the satisfaction of overcoming those hardships, the happiness that comes with your victories, whatever the case is. And when you have access to all the possibilities here, then you are able to successfully maneuver through this endeavor as a knight unblocked, unreversed. And if we can move successfully through it, then we are able to learn successfully, engage with this thing, yes, as a novice, as someone who doesn't know yet, but with the eagerness and the willingness that we're able to place here, because we're not distracted, we're not held back, we're not being hindered by this thing that we didn't address, that we're not addressing, that we're now being asked to address. My friend, I really, really hope that this helped. Godspeed on your journeys, because success is actually really, like, it's implied, but you're being told, you're being told that if you just go into it willy-nilly, you're not gonna succeed. But if you prepare for it, if you take it seriously, then a lot of success is actually available to you here. Okay, there. I'll end it there. My friend, I really hope that this helped. Godspeed. I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye. Welcome, Pile 2, to this reading on what you are woefully unprepared for. Before we begin, a couple of disclaimers, the first of which is that I cannot make up any truths for you. What that means is that if I say something that isn't true for you during this reading, understand that that's because that's something specific meant to help a specific person or a specific group of people who, like you, have come to this public reading for some guidance. Now, again, it shouldn't negate any of the reading for you. Again, there's just this understanding that it's meant to help someone else. So take what's true for you with you and just leave the rest here. The second disclaimer is that any decisions you have to make are your decisions to make. I cannot make those decisions for you. Neither should you place that responsibility onto the tarot. Tarot can help clarify any confusing thoughts or feelings that we might have surrounding a decision that we have to make, but ultimately that decision you're going to have to make yourself. It's always worth saying also that tarot is not a replacement for medical, psychiatric advice, whatever, legal advice even. It's just something to help us clarify internal stuff, intuitive stuff, and really, again, to help confirm what we already know to some degree, consciously or subconsciously. These things being said, let's dive into your reading. Now, very clearly, what's being said here is, or one of the things that's being highlighted by this reading is your psychic capacities. So if you just don't have that, if you don't feel like you have that, if you've tried and that's just not something that you're about, this isn't your reading, because this whole reading is about your psychic gifts or psychic capacities. On the one hand, if you are trying to establish a practice with these psychic gifts that you have and are honing, then that's something that you're being told you're not fully prepared for yet. And that shouldn't mean that you shouldn't pursue it or that you should stop pursuing it. it's rather just understand, hey, take care of these things that we're going to talk about, and it'll benefit you in the long run. Now, if you're not starting a practice, if that's just not true for you, then it's either going on right now or it's about to happen, where you, to whatever degree or however it comes up, you need to help someone you don't really want to help, or to however that is. Whether it's just that you don't like this person, or that they won't fully take advantage of the help that you have to give. Whatever the case is, there's something about, like, there's something that you can do for this person that you don't really want to do because of who that person is, but that you're kind of being told and guided to do that anyway. And it's really not about that person and what they might benefit from your help. It's about you and understanding that, in essence, there are times and spaces where you don't get to gatekeep your psychic capacities, because your psychic capacities are a means by which divinity speaks. And so sometimes divinity needs to speak in the way that only you can, to a person only you have access to in that way. And you deciding you don't want to help that person is basically you gatekeeping divinity's word to them, and how that falls onto them is up to them and their business, not yours. Your business is to just kind of be guided to do what you're being guided to do. And if you're tuning into a tarot reading, and if you have psychic gifts, then you understand that there's only so much we can do before the universe starts to step in a little more forcefully to get what they need to get done. To get into the specifics, obviously with the psychic card here, that's just the anchor of the whole reading here. But where, to move into the Samaritan card in its light attribute, it reads, refines your capacity to help those you would prefer to ignore. So very clear cut right there, right? And why it's in its light attribute is because it's coming up upwards. If it would have come up reversed, I'd be reading its shadow attribute. So we're ignoring that for this reading. The whole helping someone you would prefer to ignore is where I was getting that idea of that second interpretation for this whole reading, of maybe you're being guided to help someone you don't want to help. But if it's that you are trying to establish a practice, understand that part of a practice means leaving your door open to anybody who comes in, and that does mean there are going to be people who you don't 100% agree with, to whatever degree, and you would then benefit from kind of deciding now, or coming up with a plan of how you're going to deal with that. Where do you draw the line as to what you're just not willing to do for someone? Things like that, where you have to understand that the best case scenario in your head of how things are going to go is not the only possibilities, and that part of a practice, and in essence a business, because starting a practice is sort of like, I mean, it is running a business, right? At its core. And I feel like wording it that way kind of feels like it negates it or bastardizes it, because it's reducing it to a monetary profit type of thing. And I don't mean I'm not using the word business here in that sense so much as business in terms of something that you maintain and take care of. And that it is your business to maintain, and to your benefit to maintain and uphold it, right? So that idea of part of having a business that's open to people is understanding that anybody can walk through that door, and that there are going to be people with whom you don't agree with. And what does that look like? So the elaboration that's given with the divination cards, honestly, these three cards are pretty much saying exactly what I was just saying. Because Pearl, she herself, it's not that she has psychic gifts, but like in the show, there's a focus on where her pearl is, which is on the mind, and it's kind of like a third eye thing. That doesn't figure into her character or the show itself at all. It's just something that's understood. The forehead is kind of where the third eye is. And so that's just one thing. That's just one of the things that was coming through. Also, how pearls are representative of the moon, both because it's if I'm not mistaken, it's the birthstone for cancers for July, right? If I'm not mistaken. Uh, but also because it's an ocean stone and the ocean is has like symbolic connection to the moon. So and the moon being so symbolic of like psychic gifts and connections. Um Pearl really coming through for me as your capacity for that psychic connection, for connection to things beyond just yourself. And photo is really where it splits into those two separate camps, where it's either, you're starting a business or starting it as a practice, or you're being called to help someone you don't want to help. Because in the photo, like the photo card itself is meant to be a representation of like a memory or something that you hold on to, or some like a fond memory. And so if it's that you're starting a business or a practice, the photo card to me comes through as the product of the psychic practice. So kind of like how a reading is a snapshot, like a photo of the circumstance that we're talking about, or if you're going to do like astrology, how a chart is in essence a snapshot of the sky and all the planets of where they're at. So photo being the product of what your practice is. And if we're following that thread, then fry shop is the place of business where you're kind of operating from, whether it's a tangible place or not. It could be that you're just doing things in your room, recording things and uploading them, kind of like I am, and it's not like a physical place. But the fry shop card being that practice, being established, being formed, and you operating from it. If it's the second thing that's true for you, the photo card is a representation of the person or people that you do not want to help, or that you're hesitant to help because of the characters that we have. Because Pearl does not at all like the person who, one, has possession of this picture, but also the person being depicted here, the guy on the left there. Well, we won't get into the details, but the point is that she just doesn't like him and is very often forced to be in proximity to him because of the relationships that she has. And there's just always this like, I don't want to be around you, but my friends like you, and you're there. They eventually do form a relationship, but that's besides the point. And so if it's about a practice, this then being that indication of like, you don't always get a say in who you get to help. If you're going to limit yourself to helping only people that you like and who make you feel good, that's not a very solid, one, not a very solid practice, but two, it's again you gatekeeping what you can do and what you can deliver for no other reason than it just you're uncomfortable with it. And that's valid. Being uncomfortable and that being a reason for why we don't want to do something is valid. But when it comes to channeling messages or, working as as they say it, working as divinity's hands here on earth, or whatever the case is, you really don't get to gatekeep that. And so that's what the photo card here is saying. And then fry shop then being, because kind of like a business, it's open to the public. That whole idea of you don't really get to gatekeep certain things, like especially channeled messages, like those are who they're for, not for you. Kind of like how a business, like, yeah, in a business the profit is for you, sure, but your psychic gift isn't a business that you profit from, so much as it's just something that like it's there for you to do. Like a business, they do something and they offer it and people come and get that thing. So yeah. To get into the tarot portion of it, we start with the Hanged Man, which is all about accepting a perspective that, because it's so different from the one that we're used to, it is uncomfortable. Usually the Hanged Man depicts a man completely upside down, and he's hanging from his foot with a piece of rope, and he has this very like tranquil, almost happy face, and there's this shining of enlightenment around his mind, around his head, to kind of indicate that this new perspective is gaining him so much wisdom. but it's there's a cost to that perspective because he has to hang himself upside down. He doesn't have his footing. He has basically compromised any movement. He's left vulnerable, really, but he's doing so. He's making that decision to go into that uncomfortable position for what's there to be gained. Now, again, psychic gifts, at least in this case, where we're talking about your psychic gifts being used as a way to channel a message to someone else, doesn't really benefit you. Your psychic gifts by themselves can benefit you because they guide you towards your most elevated, most aligned, path. But when it's about helping others, then that really isn't to your benefit. And maybe that's what's uncomfortable here, is you don't want to benefit this person. You don't want for your gifts to benefit this person, and that's what's uncomfortable. And the thing is, that's besides the point. Like, your feelings in the grand scheme of things, especially where it concerns your gifts as a means to deliver messages, like, your feelings really get in the way of that. And you're kind of being told here, like, through this experience, that, or it's kind of like, I don't want to fearmonger, but it kind of feels like you're being tested. Like, are you, how responsible are you being with these gifts that you've been bestowed with or have been bestowed upon you? And the Hanged Man being an indication, because of the and the fact that you have psychic, is really being an indication that you do understand, you do have an understanding, and knowing that in the grand scheme of things, you not gatekeeping, you offering your wisdom, what you have to say, you're channeling, whatever it is, that you offering these things is a good thing, even if it makes you uncomfortable. The Hangman really does mean that even if either you do understand that, and you understand that it's bigger than you, in that, you should put your feelings aside. And if you're not there yet, the Hanged Man upwards is saying that you do have a capacity for it, and that it is uncomfortable, but that you can get there. The Nine of Cups upwards indicates to me the weight of certain emotions, and how certain emotions and the weight that they have can then influence our experience. And so reversed, it's our experiences being steered towards more negative, more difficult perspectives because of the negative feelings that we're kind of holding on to, that we're being kind of hindered by. These negative emotions being the ones that you're either feeling about helping a specific person that you don't want to help. And I mean, I guess that's the case for like both parties, right? That there does exist people or a person that you don't want to help. And the Nine of Cups reversed being the card that's representing that hesitation, that refusal to want to help this person. The Seven of Cups is the confusion that can exist when we have a lot of things to process and a lot of things coming at us, whether it's emotions or intuitive messages or whatever the case is. And so that's kind of where I was getting that idea of the way that your feelings do get in the way of those intuitive messages. And in fact, if you aren't careful, then if you are accommodating and making space for these negative emotions to the point that you're letting them influence your outlook and the way that you're moving through life, then you are also allowing for these feelings to stand in the way of your connection to your intuition, which then isn't a benefit. Like, then you're also like, this, you not helping this person or these people isn't just you gatekeeping this help from the people who are asking for that help will negate your access to that help for yourself. And here with the Hierophant, these two cards, the last two cards, really come through together. Because the Hierophant upwards is an individual who has the capacity for wisdom and for intuitive messages to come in. And that's what the Eight of Wands is. Eight of Wands is the representation of intuitive messages coming in. The Hierophant is the person receiving them. The thing about the Hierophant, though, is that he runs the risk of taking things a little too literally, and that wisdom not being able to come through because of the individual's grasp on the physical realm. So these feelings that we're talking about, you're so grounded into those feelings that it really doesn't allow for these messages to come in. So that's one thing that these two cards are saying. But another couple things that these cards are saying is that, one, if you negate help in this situation or in these situations, what's happening is that you are starting to become the type of person that we're talking about here. You then start to become the type of person who, you do have a capacity for wisdom. We're seeing that. But it's good, this clinging on to these emotions, and you not wanting to help, and you'd rather withhold your help than follow your gut and help where it's needed. Again, that whole idea of it costing you access to a genuine understanding of that wisdom and these gifts that are trying to come through. The Hierophant reversed is, again, that individual who can access messages from the divine, but for whom they don't come through clearly because of how grounded and drowning that individual is in the physical realm and physical immaterial things. So one thing that's saying, it's like you run the risk of corrupting yourself and polluting your gifts by giving space and honoring and accommodating such negative emotions. And that doesn't mean that like negative emotions are always bad and toxic to our gifts. No, like being angry, being sad, having grief, and all of those things, those are normal human emotions that we all experience and that can very often help us in our intuitive journeys and all of that. Great, yes. But in this specific case, you are holding on a little too much to your dislike, to your distaste, to your own feelings about a situation that you're being guided, that you're basically being told is beyond yourself. It's bigger than you. And yeah, the second thing that's being said here by these two cards is that if you don't help, it then leaves these individuals, whether you like them or not, however you feel about them, you are leaving them open to then go seek that wisdom from someone who's not equipped to deliver it, either effectively or at all. There are a lot of charlatans out there, a lot of people who claim to be psychic, a lot of people who claim to be wise, who claim to be smart, who claim to be successful, etc., but who aren't, and just want people to dupe for whatever reason, to profit off them just because they're sick and they want to dupe people. Whatever the case is, if you don't help, then this person is left vulnerable, and you will then have to witness that situation becoming worse and worse with the knowledge that you could have helped but didn't. And the point is that if you don't like this person, that might not be a problem to you. But the thing is that if you get to that point where you are looking at someone's misery and being glad of it, despite the fact of whatever history you might have with them, if you can't understand how having so much rancor and so much hate and vitriol for someone, despite what they did for you, if you can't see how leaving that unprocessed isn't going to get in the way of intuitive guidance and divine channeling and divine gifts and your psychic gifts and all of that, either you were born with these gifts and you haven't then had the proper experiences with them to understand that it's not a permanent thing, or you have forgotten what it was like before you came into these gifts and really understood the value and the benefit of them. It's not that there's a threat. Actually, no, let me take that back. There is a threat here of you losing your genuine connection, your genuine understanding of these things, and not being capable of them in the future because of how much you're allowing for this specific person to hold so much sway over yourself, your outlook, and your feelings. The whole point isn't about this person getting the benefit of your help. The whole point of this situation is you understanding that your feelings, although valid, and though there are spaces where you can abide by them and make decisions from them, where it concerns your psychic capacities, where it concerns your capacity to help others, that's where you cannot gatekeep. That's where you cannot be like, you know what, actually, fuck you, I don't like you, so you don't get this wisdom, you don't get these gifts. That's just not how it works. And this whole situation is kind of trying to show you that. Before we wrap up, I do just want to add that although in this specific situation, or in specific situations for you in the future, there are going to be times where you are being told to move in a way that you're helping someone you don't want to help. That doesn't mean that that's always going to be true. I do want to specify and clarify that, of course, there are times when you have helped, or for whatever reason you understand that you can't be around this person, where you do have to gatekeep not your gifts but yourself from someone that you have genuine reasons to gatekeep yourself from, to keep away from. In this reading, this entire reading is entirely about a situation or specific situations where you are being guided to help someone who isn't a danger to you, or who you don't have to keep yourself safe from, for whom just feelings that you just don't like feelings that you can recognize are petty or immature, or to some extent not reason enough for us to not help them. It's really about that type of situation. Be careful about taking this message and applying it in a situation where you're then going around someone that you know you shouldn't be around. Also, that the entire idea that's been kind of touched upon about you losing your genuine connection and understanding to your gifts, it's not that, oh, if you don't do things right, you're never going to be able to connect again. It's not that. It's rather that when we aren't moving in accordance to that divine wisdom that we have access to, then the connection gets a little faulty, and then we have to put the work in to realign ourselves to make that connection clear again. Just wanted to include that just before we wrap up. And yeah, that I know is a pretty rough reading, pretty brutal, to be honest. I wasn't really expecting for something like that to come through. To answer the question of what you are woefully unprepared for, again, it's not that you're not unprepared for your psychic gifts. You have them, which means you have a capacity for them. You have the capacity to hold them. But if part of your connection to those psychic gifts is understanding that wisdom isn't just for you, then you have to understand that's what you're not prepared for. That's what the part of that you're being asked to place more focus on, to make preparations for, so that you can do it better, so that it doesn't get in your way, it doesn't cost you your connection to these things in the first place. I know that this one was rough. I really hope that I didn't scare you away. And honestly, you have those psychic gifts. You have every capacity. Don't allow for this person to hold so much power over how things play out for you. They're just not worth it. And even if this person is a good person, it's just like no individual is worth us losing our gifts over. Really hope that this helped, and I hope that I catch you on the next one. Bye. Welcome, Pile 3, to this reading on what you are woefully unprepared for. Before we begin, a couple of disclaimers, the first of which is that I cannot make up any truths for you. What this means is that if I say anything during this reading that simply isn't true for you, don't let it negate the rest of the reading, and don't try to stretch what I said to fit your circumstance. Instead, understand that this is a space that multiple people can come into, and so I am receiving messages for multiple people. And so something that I might be saying that isn't true for you is very likely something meant for a specific person or a specific group of people to help them on their journey, and again, should not negate the rest of the reading for you. So just take what's for you with you, and leave the rest here. The second disclaimer is that I cannot make any decisions for you. I am just a stranger on the internet uploading these readings for who needs them, and at its core, tarot can help us clarify any confusing thoughts or feelings we might have about a decision we have to make. But at the end of the day, that decision, our lives, that's all up to us. Lastly, it is worth mentioning that tarot cannot replace medical psychiatric, otherwise professional advice or counsel, seek those things as you need them. Again, tarot is really just meant to confirm what we, to some degree, consciously, subconsciously, intuitively already know. These things being said, let's dive into your reading. What you are woefully unprepared for is what you want, basically. How I'm seeing it here is that you have really big dreams, really big ambitions, and you have the capacity to get those things. You have the capacity, the access to the opportunities, to the resources necessary to get what it is that you want. But your immaturity, for lack of a better term, not in a bad way, but just you don't have the necessary experiences, maturity to really get there. And it's more than just an immaturity, it's a dependence on your lack of knowledge and lack of experience. That's really, really going to cost you here. Let's get into the specific cards so that you can kind of see how I'm getting this entire message. Fire here at the beginning, as it comes through for me, because fire is a motivating factor, and that's generally how I interpret the wands cards, which are associated with the fire element. So I'm using it, I'm interpreting it here as a driving force, as a motivator. Also, kind of, it's showing up in my head as a fire under your ass, something that's like really gonna get you going to where it is that you need to go. But the thing is, a fire isn't comfortable. Like it's not a pleasant experience per se. Fire also brings to mind like cooking, and I've used this metaphor before. I can't remember when. It might be in like one of these readings that I just did today. I can't remember. But the point is, that idea of a fire cooks something. It changes, through like chemical reactions and all of that. It changes the thing that you start with, the ingredients that you put together, and it changes it into your product. But like it transforms it through like this, through heating it up. And although the things that we're throwing in a pot aren't alive and like sentient, hopefully, and I'm only saying hopefully in the terms of how some people boil crawfish alive, and I think there are more humane ways of doing that. Anyways, my point is that fire isn't meant to be it isn't a comfortable element. And that seems to be an inherent part of this journey here that we're talking about. Artist, in its shadow attribute, because it's coming up reversed, reads: using talent as an excuse to mistreat others, posing as the starving artist to elicit pity. That card is where, one, I was getting that idea of the big dreams and ambitions that you have, like an artist, the imagination, the creativity, the expanse of their capacity to imagine and think also gives them the capacity to dream and want big. It could be that you're an artist, and that's true, and in that case, your art could be what we're talking about is what you kind of need to do more to prepare for the task of what being an artist is. Beyond that, what's true for all of you, what I'm getting from the artist card, is that idea of using what you have, what you are, in this case with the artist, their talent, as an excuse. Not so much to mistreat others. It could be that you're mistreating others, but again, just that idea of using something that you have as an excuse for your behavior. Moving into these three cards, and okay, if you've never watched Steven Universe, don't worry about it. I bullet points here. Steven is the main character, and throughout the course of the show, like with pretty much any cartoon show, he goes through incredible character development. And he starts out as this really immature young child, because he's allowed to be. He's like 7 or 8 years old at the first episode, so he very much acts and reacts to very serious things going on around him as a child. And it can be a little aggravating to watch, and that lack of maturity, that his silliness and his need, like his want to goof off because he's a kid, very much does often get him into trouble or get in the way of the mission overall, because he doesn't know any better. And as he matures, as he does start to grow up, he does start to become aware of how his lack of experience and immaturity is a hindrance. It drives him to want to do better, to mature, to basically not be he just doesn't want to be in the way, right? So he does better so that he can be useful and conducive to the missions and the team in general. And so at the beginning, that we have this character as the first card of 3 really depicts to me how you're coming through as Steven at the beginning of the show, where he just doesn't have the necessary experiences. You don't have the necessary experiences to really take on what it is that you're trying to take on. So let's say if you are an artist, and let's say you are a singer, and you have dreams of becoming the world's next big singing sensation. Fantastic, phenomenal, do that. But the thing is, this lack of maturity might then be like, okay, you think that all you have to do is just exist and sing really, really well and just practice your voices, and you'll just be discovered. You're not doing anything to put your voice out there to become recognized. You're not uploading those TikToks. You're not uploading onto YouTube. You're not doing anything to promote yourself. Nothing. You're just kind of sitting in your talent and just like sitting there with it. So it could be that. It could be that you want to do those things, but you just don't know how. You've never recorded a video. You know that there's more to it than just hitting record on your phone, and it overwhelms you, all of the things that it takes to like post those things. It could be that you just simply don't know yet what it takes to take on those things and eventually get yourself to where you want to go. The point is that is the point, that there is a lack of knowledge and the required experiences, required resources necessary for the scope of your ambitions. Together breakfast to me comes through here as partially as the size of your expectations. And it's not that you need to size them down, but rather that you need to understand that it's going to take more than you to get this dream done, and that teamwork isn't about getting everybody on to your page. Leadership can be like that, and sometimes, yes, being in a team does mean getting everybody on your page because you know that that's what's best. But if we're acknowledging that you don't currently have all of the experience necessary, if we're acknowledging that you don't know what it's going to take, or you're not fully there yet, then part of that does mean delegating or trusting someone else to guide you, to counsel you, to whatever the case is, to get you there. And so it's partially the idea that you do have to play ball sometimes, but also the benefit of doing that. It's not just learning how to compromise and listen or trust other people, but learning the fruit of that, learning that sometimes someone else does know better, and that can be a relief sometimes. And sometimes we learn ourselves from that, like, oh, okay, now I know that thing now that I didn't know that, and you start to develop that knowledge. The running eye here at the end, because it's something that comes in towards the end of the show, towards the last final episodes, the last leg of the episodes, and it kind of contrasts to me how this card at the beginning depicts you without the knowledge. This card to me depicts you having gone through the necessary experiences to gain the necessary wisdom and maturity to then be able to take on this huge thing and ambition that you want to take on. Because the roaming eye comes in when this character, after all of the experiences that he's gone through, all of the seasons, he's grown and developed a lot. He hops into this rocket ship and he goes into space to rescue his dad. And he's never been out to space, and the odds are like truly against him, but it's his dad, and so there's a fire under his ass, and so he's gonna go and do this thing. And where in the past he might have been scared because he understands the scope of what he's against, now because of the experiences that he's had, he's proven to himself that he's not, I'm not calling you useless, but like, or him useless, but it's like, it's in essence, like if he goes out there, he's not shed out of luck. Like, he does have abilities, he does have knowledge, he does have wisdom, he does have skills that will help him on this journey. He's not entirely like, oh well, I don't know what I'm doing. It's he does. He has learned some things. And although it is going to be difficult, although it does seem impossible, he can't just sit around and do nothing, because again, he has learned some things and he's going to go and do these things. So these three cards really being a progression where you start out as someone who really doesn't know anything but wants to, and is willing, with the next card, willing to put in that work to learn what it means to work with others for a common goal, trusting others to help us get to where we want to get to. And through those experiences and whatever else you go through over time, really getting to a point where you not only are willing to take on these impossible things, but you have the skills and knowledge and wisdom necessary to give you the confidence to take on these things, however impossible they might feel. The tarot cards pretty much, well, no, they kind of get into something, they elaborate. Let's go with that. So the Ace of Cups here at the beginning is, to me, the heart, the core, the source of this ambition that we have. So going back to that metaphor of the singing, you want to be the world's next singing sensation. The Ace of Cups then is the talent. And not just the talent, but the love for singing, the love for music, that drive behind why you want to do this. Kind of like that fire under your ass, to contradict, because cups are water, but the Ace of Cups is this overflowing heart, over us when we overflow, like our talent, our skill, when we have a gift and we utilize it well, it is really fulfilling. It does fill us up, and we take from that overflow, and that's what we create with and put out into the world. And so the Ace of Cups here really showing up as, again, the source of what it is that you're wanting, of whatever your ambition is. The Queen of Wands reversed is a mishandling of that Ace of Cups energy. The Queen of Wands upwards is someone who utilizes everything at their disposal, all of their resources, resourcefully for their goal, basically. Reversed, then, it's them still having access to those resources and everything that they have access to, but then using it for more selfish needs or a singular need that doesn't benefit the whole, because the queen is responsible, has a responsibility to for their people, over their people. And so reversed, it's them mishandling that responsibility and using those resources for selfish gains rather than for the kingdom, for the people, whatever the case is. So the Queen of Wands here next to the Ace of Cups, the Queen of Wands reversed next to the Ace of Cups, a mishandling of that Ace of Cups energy. And that mishandling being elaborated by the Page of Cups upwards. The Page of Cups upwards, I love the depiction here because he's so enthralled in this document that he's reading that he's completely ignorant to the zombie that's coming up behind him to attack him. And that's kind of what's being said here, is that if the... okay. Because the Queen of Wands upwards would be a demonstration of this together breakfast energy, where, okay, you understand the resources available to you and you're using them wisely, resourcefully to get to where you want to go. The Queen of Wands reversed being a mishandling of that. It's, again, you not taking any action, you not doing the proper necessary things to acquire this goal. And the Page of Cups, I mean, all pages are novices, children, people who don't know things. So again, that theme of immaturity, that theme of lack of knowledge, and experiences and the necessary wisdom. And the Page of Cups really showing up here as, okay, because it's the Ace of Cups and the Page of Cups. So if the Ace of Cups is this overflowing energy, right? Our heart is overflowing. We are overflowing with all of this inspiration and talent and skill, or whatever the case is. And picture, like, kind of like in this image, instead of a zombie, it's like this bathtub behind you. And you're over here reading the instructions of, like, Okay, maybe this is okay. Okay, hold on. Let me come up with a good analogy here. Okay, this is a really weird analogy, but just go along with me. Okay, let's say if you didn't have an easy bake oven, I am so sorry because those were such a treat. But if you don't know what an easy bake oven is, it's basically an oven meant for kids, and it uses a light bulb to bake things. Yes, I did burn my hands as a child using an easy bake oven. No, I don't have any regrets. It was such a joy to have one of them. But the point is that if you were a little kid, and just go with me, even if you've never had one or wanted one, you in this analogy, in this metaphor, in this instance, you are so excited for this easy bake oven because you've never had one and you've always wanted to fit a one fun. It's Christmas, it's your birthday, you get one, and you're so excited for your easy bake oven. And in your excitement, in your immaturity and lack of knowledge that we're talking about here, you put all the ingredients together and you stick it into your easy bake oven before reading all of the instructions. And you leave the easy bake oven on, and you're like, man, maybe I should read the instructions because I have no idea what I just did. And so you're over here reading the instructions and you're like, I should have done this before, but you're like, it's okay. Meanwhile, behind you, the easy bake oven is burning not only what's inside of it, but it's overheating because it's like what's inside of it overflowed because you didn't measure it properly, and it's now getting into the circuitry. And worst case scenario, a whole fire is starting up behind you because you got so excited, you mishandled this gift, what it was, and now there's this bigger problem than you originally anticipated because you mishandled it. And so that's what I'm getting with the Page of Cups, where you are going for things that require queen, king energy here, master levels of skill and knowledge and wisdom, but you're engaging with it as a page, as someone who genuinely doesn't know how to do these things yet. And if you continue to do so, you will pay the price for it. Why? Because you're going on the deep end when you don't even know how to swim. You are engaging with dangerous things before you know how to handle them. And that is dangerous. That can have very severe consequences. And that's what the Page of Cups here, surrounded by monarchs, reversed ones at that, is really telling me here. That's what's really coming through here, is that you're way out of your depth here, and if you continue down this path before you're ready for it, you're gonna pay some type of consequence for it. Not to fearmonger, maybe that consequence is just you not getting what it is that you want. It could be worse than that, I don't really know, but the point is that you are over your head here. The Eight of Cups, I mean, it shows water above all of everything, so mirroring and just continuing that whole thing. But the Eight of Cups upwards is being able to progress to something better. Whether sometimes it's like we progress to something better, even when it's uncomfortable to us, like listening to our intuition. This is just an example. I'm not saying that it's true for you, but like sometimes the Eight of Cups upwards comes up when we deep down know we shouldn't be somewhere, but like for whatever reason we just linger, we stay there. And so the Eight of Cups upwards is like, okay, this is a difficult, weird thing for me to move on from this, but I'm going to move on because I know that it's better for me to do so. So being able to progress to something better. So then reversed, it's that progression being denied, you not having access to progressing to something better, to an elevation, because you're coming into it at a time before you're ready for it. You're engaging with it at a time when you because of your lack of knowledge and wisdom necessary, you're mishandling it, and because you're mishandling it, you're not being allowed towards the wealth and success that could be possible for you. The King of Pentacles is master of wealth, has access to all of the wealth, is the success at the end of this ambition. The King of Pentacles is in essence to me representing here what your ambition is. If going back to that metaphor, if you want to be the singing sensation, the King of Pentacles is you being there and being the most famous singer on the planet. It coming up reversed is then that not being given access to that because of everything that we're talking about. So the Eight of Cups upwards would then be a successful progression to this King of Pentacles energy, but they're coming up reversed, both the progression and the goal, because you're engaging with it as the page, as someone who's simply not ready for it because of what you're mishandling. You do have what it takes to get there. The ace, what's at the core, what the source of all of that, the talent, the desire for it, the motivation for it, the drive, the passion, whatever it is, you do have what it takes to get there, but you're mishandling it. You're shooting above your station, so to speak. I really, really hope that this helps. I hope I didn't scare you away. And I hope that I catch you on the next one. Godspeed. Bye.